Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, you will see the second that I jump into the video that my skin is quite sunburned and a little bit damaged because the past 2 days I was out in the sun for a little bit too much time, not gonna lie. I had my SPF 50 on, I reapplied it throughout the day, but I still got a sunburn and sometimes that's unavoidable. So we're going to be taking you guys through my hydrating and reparative base routine. This is going to be the products I like to use when my skin is a little bit worse for wear, after I've experienced a little bit too much sun and I want to even out the base, make it look really pretty without feeling like my skin is on fire from all of the sunburn. So if that's something you're into, make sure to keep on watching. And please don't forget to subscribe because I upload 3 times a week, and that's going to be the best way to stay up to date on all the fun stuff I'm posting. And yeah, if you want to see how we got here with our face looking pretty red, if you were on my Instagram stories on Saturday, you will have seen I was super red, super inflamed, and already starting to peel. That's how bad it was. I was on a boat. I was kind of like stuck out in the world, so didn't really have the option of like going home. But I had such a good time, so like I'm not even mad. But this is going to be how we fixed it. Stay tuned. Okay, so you guys can see clearly I got a little bit of color in the past few days. I used SPF, cleaned, and made sure that I was super protected. I reapplied my SPF, but I still got a sunburn, and that is unfortunately one of the occupational hazards of going out in the sun. So we're going to be going through my skin is tender and burned and sensitive and discolored. How do we still put ourselves together? So the first thing you're going to want to do is take a soothing primer. So I'm going to be using the Skin Revival Organic Hydrate and Glow Oil from Beauty For Real. No, this video is not sponsored. These are just the products I have found that work best when I have a little bit of an issue. So this is a reparative oil. So this is going to do a few things. The first is that it's going to hydrate the skin to help reduce flaking and peeling because, unfortunately, you got to protect first. So if you do end up peeling, you're going to be putting makeup on top of flaky skin, and that is not going to be desirable. So by taking an oil like this, you're going to make sure that that's something you hopefully don't have to deal with. It also, in addition to just being straight up hydrating, is going to be revival, skin revival, repairing. So this is going to help the skin to naturally repair itself. Now, I am skipping a smoothing primer just because while my pores do tend to be an area of concern for me, right now I am starting to flake a little bit. So I feel like that's just going to grab to flaking skin. So I'm going to skip that altogether and go right into my Beauty For Real MVP Perfect and Protect. It is an SPF 25, which I did already put on an SPF 50, tinted moisturizer, concealer, hydrator, corrector. So this is going to be like all in one so that I don't have to like overload my skin. And what I'm going to do is, this is a concealer as well. So squeeze the tinted moisturizer and then in the cap is the concealer. So I'm going to be using both of those. The way I do that is I take a little bit and I'm just going to dot it in the center of the face. Because I am dealing, I might have put on too much. It's okay, it blends really easily. Because I do have a lot of heightened discoloration in the center of the face, I'm going to make sure that most of the product I put down is targeted in this area. And then I am starting by stippling. And then once I feel like I've moved the product where I need it to go, then I'm going to go in small circular motions. I am using a brush instead of a sponge. What I've noticed, especially when you have like flaking on your skin, going in with a brush is going to help to make sure you've smoothed everything over. Using a sponge is going to still sit on top of any of that flakiness. So I will start by circular motions, blending everything together, and see how it's already started to even me out. And this is a light amount of coverage. You can actually build this product up and build it all the way up to full coverage if that's what you like. But if you're just looking for a lightweight tinted moisturizer and a skin tint, you can do that as well. Now notice the area I got the most burnt, which is literally the center of my nose. I'm going to zoom you in so you can see this because this is not pretty. But you see how it is really flaking? That's where I'm going to switch over to a sponge. And I'm going to take a tiny bit more of the tinted moisturizer. I will be taking concealer as well, but I'm going to take a little bit of the tinted moisturizer and just pat it over the nose. And I am not going to touch it once it's on. I'm just going to let it dry down. I'm going to pull you guys back out. Now going into the concealer, and I'm going to, on a little brush, take a little bit of that, and I'm going to add a little to the inner portion. This is going to end up blending out to the entire under eye, tiny bit to the forehead, a little bit down the tip of the nose. Because this is super creamy, it is going to blend on top of the skin. I'm not using any more product. I'm just kind of pre-blending and moving this around a bit. And I will need a tiny bit more just on the bridge of the nose. So this is not going to dry out the skin because it's super hydrating. You guys know I tend to have more oily skin, so I tend to start going in with things that are a little more mattifying. When my skin is burnt or in any way sensitive, I don't do that. So I'm going to be using the Juno & Co. sponge because it has these little fibers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by patting it in and then small circular motions. This sponge actually allows you to do both. And then if you find you need to, take a tiny bit of setting spray just to wet your brush. Just because we want to make sure that we are blending into the concealer with a little bit of extra hydration. So a hydrating setting spray will help that out. And then switching to the tip of the sponge with a little bit more setting spray, blending it up. I find it so funny that like 2 days ago, this shade was a little too dark for me. And now 2 days in the sun, and it's like the perfect match. Now I'm having a little bit of extra grabbing up here. So the way I'm going to combat that is I'm going to go with the sponge right into the concealer and just stamp that in. Normally I wouldn't add this much because with this concealer, a tiny bit goes such a long way. However, I'll just have to add some extra bronzer because the cream sits on top of the flaked skin a little bit better. Now for powder, I'm going to be using the Sephora Micro Smooth Powder. This is in the shade 15. The reason I'm using this is it is a baked powder, which means it will set down everything, but because it's baked, it is not as drying. So this will be a good way for me to set down everything, keep it looking perfected without it grabbing. That's something you can always do if you find that you get cakey throughout the day, or like a loose powder is giving you too much heaviness. Go in with a pressed powder instead because it's so much easier to take a light amount of powder when it is pressed. Back to the sponge, which I will be spraying it down with a little bit more setting spray and a little bit on the face. This is Fix Plus from MAC. I am in the process of going cruelty-free, so I am using up what I have. After that, you will no longer be seeing most cruelty-free products on my channel. Obviously, it comes in a box. I'm probably still going to have to review it but I will let you know the details behind it because I'm here to educate. But I will not like intentionally show extra products if I don't have to. Now that that's pressed in, I'm not taking any more powder on the brush. I'm just going to use the brush I used. I'm just going to lightly press over everything. You'll notice that this powder also gives a nice little glow to the skin. It is not a mattifying powder, so it's not going to make the skin look any off. And if you saw the intro, or I guess you saw the opening of the video, my skin was quite red and quite discolored, and now look at how evened out we are. Obviously there's no dimension because I haven't added any bronzer of any kind, but as far as just neutralizing that redness, we're in good shape. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to take the cap concealer and just set down my eyelids, and I'll be right back. Okay, eyes are primed and I threw on a quick brow. I'm actually going to be not doing eyes because I'm going to film a separate eye video after this, but I did want to show you guys the rest of the base routine because when it comes to blending on top of irritated skin, you want to be super gentle. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with this from Wander Beauty. It is the Trip for Two Blush and Bronzer Duo. The reason I like this is the powder is super finely milled, so blending it over the skin doesn't actually like take a lot of effort. And the best part, it is slightly radiant. So when you are sunburned and your skin has that like soft glow to it and you have to put on makeup to even it out. You don't have to, obviously makeup is optional, but you know what I mean. Like if you, for some reason, have to put on makeup while your skin is in a sensitive spot, you want something that's going to offer that same sun-kissed glow that you have under the makeup. And notice, we started with an oil. We're using a hydrating, illuminating base. I used a hydrating powder. Even though I have more oily skin, on the days where my skin is super sensitive and tender, specifically from sun damage, I do try to make sure that I go in with some extra hydrating product, because that's what's going to help me to heal faster. Taking a clean powder brush, I'm just going to kind of press out the under eye and kind of pull any residual powder that's there to blend it into that bronzer. Because again, we are sensitive and damaged. We don't want to add more and more and more powder, because all that's going to do is make us look cakey. Now the goal of today is to look as good as we normally do without any extra issues because of the sunburn. Taking that same clean brush, I'm just swirling the forehead, because this is an area I tend to have the most concerns with flakiness, especially, skin is damaged. And I'm just going to go back in with a tiny bit more of that setting spray and just press it out. And then with whatever's left on there, do the same to the under eye. This is what's going to keep us from looking creasy or cakey. Now obviously the easiest answer is just if you have sensitivity from sunburn, don't wear makeup. But that's not always an option, and sometimes you have to. Now normally I would put a little bit of bronzer down the sides of my nose to contour it a little bit, but because my nose is where I got the biggest amount of issues from the sun, I don't want to add anything because that area is super flaky. So instead, I'm just going to take that clean brush and just press over the bridge of the nose, and I'm going to be adding a little bit of blush right here. You saw where it was super blushy. That's going to be our like sun-kissed glow. I'm not going to be taking the blush out of this today because I want something a little bit more of like a corally tone. So I'm jumping into my Alamar Blush Trio. This is the medium tan, and I'm actually going to mix the two lighter shades, mostly the middle one. So mostly the shade Isla, which is more of like a tangerine coral. And I'm going to start by adding that to the cheek, because this is like a really pretty sun-kissed glow kind of color. Plus, this has such a nice luminosity to it that it really does look sun-kissed. Taking a little bit more of that same shade down the bridge of the nose. And now it looks like we have a little bit of that sunburn shining through, which is what we want today. Dipping into my bronzer brush, I'm just going to blend out the temples a little bit, because I want that blush to make everything look a little burnt. Like, I want to be authentic to the fact that I do have a sunburn, but I do also want to make sure that it looks good. And then jumping into the shade Seclusion right here, which is the true, like, tangerine orange shade, I'm going to add a tiny bit more of the blush to the highest points of the cheek. And now that we have our natural, but also fake, but also really pretty fake sunburn on top of our real sunburn, once more with the sponge and a little bit more of a setting spray, just to press that blush into the cheek. Now I am skipping eyeshadow for right now, so instead I'm just going to curl my lashes. And for lip, we're just going to take a nice shiny gloss. This is one of my favorites. It's from Dior. It is the Lip Maximizer Hyaluronic Lip Plumper. It is a super pretty sheer pink. And it just adds this most beautiful, like, wet effect to the lips. The reason I love this so much is it's also, like, I have a lot of, I like the Fenty gloss. I love the Beauty For Real glosses. Like, I have a lot of glosses I do like. With this one, I think my favorite part is that I can layer it up all day long and just keep applying it, and it never gets gunky or gooey on the skin. And the last thing we want is a little highlight. You'll see there is already a nice glow to the cheeks. So I'm not going in with like a super small, precise highlighting brush. I'm actually taking this. This is from Morphe. It is the Jaclyn Hill 06 brush, which is super large and you'll see quite fluffy. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to grab a highlighter. This is the Cover FX Gold Bar palette, which I got in the BoxyCharm Boxy Pop-Up. And I'm actually going to mix this shade down here with a tiny bit of the rosy shade. So it's like 3 in the gold, 1 in the pink. And then I'm just going to blend that over the cheek. And just, you see the difference, how it just gives you this wet effect on the whole cheek. The reason I went in with that blend of color is I'm using this less as a highlight and more as a cheek topper. But I do want to make sure that it is the right tone so you get that nice sun-kissed glow. And then whatever's left on the brush, I'm just going to dust everywhere. Again, because our skin is looking a little bit worse for wear, this is the time for us to add a little bit of that glow strategically to deflect the light so it doesn't look quite so damaged. One last hit of a glowy setting spray. This is the Wet n Wild Jungle Rock collection with Bretman Rock. And that is going to be it. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been my after sun sunburned complexion and base routine. Honestly, there's a little bit of peeling around my nose and a tiny bit in the center of my forehead. But honestly, I've said this about complexion all the time. If there are bumps or flakiness under your skin, there's really not a lot of makeup that can cover that. I mean, if you're using something like Dermablend, which is magic on top of acne and scarring and stuff like that, you'll be able to have a little bit of a better routine. But if I don't, someone like me, if I don't personally need that all the time, that might not be something I look for every single day in my makeup, that I might not have it on hand. This is, I'm not unhappy with how it looks. It's a little bit grabby right here and just on the nose, which if I really felt like it, I could totally have done high coverage, but I still want my skin to be able to breathe. So all in all, this is something that I am really happy with, especially with how sunburned my skin was. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and found this helpful. If you did, as always, let me know down below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!